welcome to Let's Talk About Live Shopping, a series dedicated to unraveling the intricacies of video commerce in all its various formats. I'm your host, Cynthia Nelson, three-time entrepreneur, Forbes contributor, investor, and advisor. Today, we're talking to Ari Evans, CEO of Maestro.io. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, Cynthia, thank you so much for having me.
First up, I kind of want to talk about the story. There, everybody's got a story. How did you end up? Like, how's a nice guy like you ending up in a place like this? Video commerce and the craziness that it is. So, like, how did this come about?
Totally. So, Maestro actually spun out of a different startup that I had before this, which was in the music space. And that startup came to my mind after working at Zynga, where I was building games that were, highly massive, mostly social games that were made for the masses, but the revenue was coming from a very small percentage of the audience who
Mhm.
were the whales and sort of the super fans of the game. And so that really opened my eyes to how entertainment can be monetized in a way that was very different from how I had previously perceived it. Leaving Zynga, I joined a startup accelerator, which was StartX out of Stanford. And we tried to kind of combine this music blog that we had with these Zynga elements and create a like shared listening experience where you could buy virtual collectibles. It's kind of like NFTs, but like 15 years ago.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And through buying those collectibles, you would unlock content. And so that was being scaled up and we were doing well with it. But then we realized we were building a product just for super fans and that the TAM of that product wasn't as big as we wanted it to be.
Yeah.
So one thing led to another. And we kind of took this key learning about this shared listening social experience and then kind of stumbled into live streaming as a video version of that versus just a pure audio version. And so we got the opportunity to launch a kind of super alpha version of it with Ultra Music Festival in Miami and started to think about, okay, how can we make a live stream on that scale interactive and more fun for the viewers at home? And a lot of the angles that first year were, okay, and how can we also make this a thing that a sponsor pays for?
Right.
So, there was that kind of angle on the monetization. But what happened is after that successful launch, we took it to more music festivals, and then we started thinking more broadly about this problem, which is okay, if live streaming is going to be a major type of consumed media, how can we add value to what it's doing for the brand? And that's essentially taking it from a pure marketing reach based approach to, okay, what else, how else can we prove that it's driving value to the business? And eventually that became, how can we prove that it's doing something to affect the bottom line of a business,
Right. Right.
right? Because a lot of these live streams don't have any kind of attribution
Right.
back to the business KPI.
Yeah.
And when budgets get cut, marketing's the first to go because of that problem.
Yeah.
So we started to think more about that. And over time, as our business expanded into different categories, we kind of went from music into esports and gaming, which was already kind of live streaming native. And then
Hmm.
we went into sports and then into comedy and then kind of opened things up. And over time, these sort of two patterns emerged, which is one set of customers wants to just continue on this marketing approach where they want to collect user data, and that user data is going to inform some monetization happening downstream.
Hmm.
An example of that would be like Fortnite.
Hmm.
Fortnite makes money when you play their game
Yep.
and spend money in the game. And their esports or competitive program is really about encouraging and keeping that like core community engaged and getting them to continue spending.
Hmm.
But that link and the attribution is hard to draw unless people are logging in with their Epic accounts.
Right.
On Twitch, they are not.
Right.
So that was like our angle. Hey, we get to help you solve this, make that data connection, and then tell that story about the impact it's making to your business by combining the data set of the viewer with the player.
Hmm.
That's one kind of customer segment. And then the other customer segment just wants to make money very directly from the content, where the content is the thing that is being sold.
Hmm.
And so that would be like your Billy Eilish doing a ticketed live stream that we did, or Louis C.K. with his comedy show from MSG that he did, or the live shopping examples, which is what we're talking about primarily here today. And so our entrance into live shopping didn't come from the angle of the content is being used to sell you a product. it came from the angle that's more like you go to a concert and there is a merch table there and you're buying things while you are there and doing the digital equivalent of that. But now over time, customers have also dabbled with, no, no, I just want to make content to sell you things and I want to make that as easy as possible for you to buy while you're watching. Obviously, drawing a lot of inspiration from what's happening in China. So that brings us to today.
That's a really unique path, I would
Yeah,
say.
very unique.
The very not a straight line.
Never is.
Yeah, no, never is by any stretch of the imagination. And there's a lot of platforms out there, as I've talked to kind of everybody under the sun, basically. And we talked about this before of like the consolidation that's coming and things that are going to be happening in the market. But your USP seems to be very unique. If someone comes to you, what are the things that differentiate you from, everybody else out there that's just doing the live shopping platforms?
So, what has always been the number one differentiator for Maestro is the white label approach that we've taken. So, we draw a lot of inspiration from Shopify,
Hmm.
right? And a lot of people say, well, Shopify and Amazon kind of compete. Well, not really, right? They coexist because they're kind of diametrically opposed strategies. And usually, if you're a seller, you use both.
Hmm.
One of them has an audience, but you don't have control. You don't own the customer relationship.
Yep.
In the other case, you bring the audience, but then you have full control and the audience relationship and the data and so on. So, what typically happens is if you are marketing your own products as a seller, typically you're going to market them on your Shopify store.
Yep.
Those are the links you're going to put out on social media and your emails and so on. But if people find you on Amazon and then eventually try to, funnel you from there into a more branded owned experience,
Yep.
then that's kind of giving you the best of both worlds. In video, we primarily have the Amazon model, right? Which is the marketplace model. So that's your TikToks, YouTubes,
Mhm.
Twitch, everything else like that. And up until now, there hasn't really been a lot of, well, what if I wanted to do that all myself?
Mhm.
First of all, that sounds like a lot of work.
We know it is.
Yeah, sounds way too complicated for me. I'm like a one-man show or a small team.
Yep, yep.
And I think that again is what Shopify did so beautifully is, yeah, they took something insanely complex and made it $30 a month and anybody can do it,
Simple, yeah.
right? And it's so simple to do. So that is the opportunity for us is taking the approach of, okay, you have some audience,
Mhm.
right? And we encourage you to be wherever you are. If you already are big on TikTok or YouTube or Instagram or
Right,
whatever,
yeah,
great. But think of that as the top of the funnel
right,
and
right,
then funnel people into
right.
your own destination.
I think there's so much that to be said, around and regarding that, just because of, I mean, brands are finally waking up to like, hey, you need to actually own this customer, and at retail, you don't own shit. Yeah,
Right.
we're selling your product at X retail, but we're not giving you any of that data.
Totally.
You're getting sales out data, you're getting paid, your shelf space, your shelf talker, whatever, but you're not getting any of that data. And, having an authentic relationship as a seller with your audience and being able to own that data and then actually really knowing what to do with it. And I know you have an extensive dashboard and all the analytics on the back end, to enable people to then go back and retarget and remarket. And that's a whole nother, I think you're ahead in that way of that whole marketing retargeting
Yeah,
effort, because a lot of platforms, they haven't made that next connection, which is now you've got all this data. Most people don't know what the hell to do with it.
totally. I mean, I think that's something that we're constantly learning more about is kind of how full service you really need to be and think about the fact that your customer is a business owner.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, what are all the elements that go into making a business successful?
Yeah.
You got to think about it top to bottom.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the live shopping experience, yes, we can technically enable you to buy something while you watch. And I think we have one of the most seamless checkout experiences that there are. But then it's to your point, well, what else needs to go into that? Okay, how do I actually create my content to begin with? So
Right.
we have a studio product that makes it easy for you to create really professional broadcasts or videos just in your browser with no knowledge. Okay, how do you then create segments of your audience then to market to
Right.
later on? Okay, that's another element of it.
Yeah.
There's just so many layers. And I think that's one of the things that we think a lot about. And even in the watch experience, it's not just like watch and buy, but like, okay, how do you foster community?
Right.
right? Can you do other things that engage audiences other than just trying to get them to buy things?
Right. Right.
Polls, trivia, gamification. I
Yep.
mean, there's so much to it.
And again, thinking as the business owner, customer first, right? What do they need to do to actually eventually sell this product, right? Because some products, they go in, there's a lot of explanation that has to happen. A lot of, they're doing it for, to teach the customer how this product, how to use it, right? If it's
Mm-hmm.
complicated or it's technical, or they just want to see the uses of it and getting them into that funnel. And then through the same video commerce or snippets thereof after the fact, right? After a live, the
Mm-hmm.
snippet side, being able to use that to go back and retarget people who had watched or listened or had interest or even were there for, 2 minutes, but they still had signed up and they went to the show and you're able to go back and retarget them. It kind of brings me to, all this. I mean, I know CES is next week. So I've been talking to a lot of people that are attending, and like, of course, AI, 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 and then a lot of other things that happen. But AI, AI, pretty
Yeah,
much
of course.
EIEIO, AI, kind of.
Right, right.
What do you think about AI just overall? And are there things on your roadmap that you're looking at for the product?
Yeah, well, so just to touch on what we just talked about with the content strategy, right? There's a whole world of what should my content be, right? And then what products should I sell with that content? And that really is an
Yeah,
art and a science that I think is still very much developing best
yeah,
practices. And so if you kind of peel that apart a little bit, one application of AI is making your content. And
yeah.
I think we're about to hit the wave of video AI creation tools becoming very accessible and cost effective. I mean, there's already plenty of things you can sign up in beta and that
Right.
are looking really good, but it's about to just open a tidal wave, I think.
I think so too.
That's going to be good and bad, right? We're kind of going to like flood the internet with a bunch more stuff, and I think signal to noise ratio is going to get worse for a while.
Yeah,
Um, but at the same time, I think like being human will in some ways become more special. Weirdly enough, we're going to in some ways come back to that, but then we're also going to see the more increased rise of like YouTubers and avatars being the person that sells you something, and it's not actually one person buying that.
yeah,
And then on the what should we sell you side of things, one of the things we do is try to work with our customers on thinking through what they should be selling. So, for example, we've had situations where customers like they pick the wrong things to sell and then they don't sell well,
yeah,
especially in the context of like a concert or a like a esports event or even a sporting event. Your traditional stuff will sell, of course, but like what can you sell that feels unique to that audience that is attending virtually that isn't there, right? Can it be something exclusive, something collectible? It's
right.
basic. It's some of this stuff is basic practices, but it's just not known yet.
It's
It's
basic practices for normal marketing, right? But in the digital version of it, it feels like everybody's trying to reinvent the wheel. It's like, no, 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 this stuff actually already happens.
totally. And
Like
what's
those
mind
things
blowing
are
about
already happening.
Yeah, and look, we have all this incredible marketing tech and CRMs and CDPs and everything to give you a unique message, but do we do that on video?
Yeah, no,
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 right? It's like why don't we do this here yet?
yeah,
And so Maestro is very fortunate that we were actually granted a patent a few years ago, which is a technology for personalizing overlays to viewers. So you have the same video, but the call to action to the viewer might be different. And that could be just choosing a different product to sell them, but it also could be not choosing to sell them a product at all. Maybe
yeah,
that's a
that's
time to
interesting.
suggest something else. They're not ready to make, they're not down the funnel far enough in their purchasing journey that they need something else at that point in time. And I think there's a lot of opportunity there because video is still the most expensive content to create. Even if it's
100%.
AI created, it's still going
Yeah,
to be the most expensive.
yeah, always.
Right? And so this is a going to be a very cost effective way to probably get a lot more value out of what you're producing is just personalizing to the viewer. And the example that I use here all the time is when you attend a sporting event in a stadium, let's say, that experience has been crafted where there's all these different micro experiences that are there for the different audiences
Yeah,
so that you could be super into stats or betting or there for because with your friends you like the social element of being part of a
exactly.
team,
Exactly.
right? So that's why these video experiences need to be less myopic and take into account the diversity of the audience that is there.
Yeah,
So
because
that's what we're really
what I
excited about.
like in certain things in living in New York, is very different than the same type of person living in LA. Like our personalities are different, even though we're watching the same thing, we're getting different things out of it and
Right.
collect and knowing me enough, right? Gathering enough data on me to be able to serve me back things. And I'm like, oh, they really, and first of all, it builds that brand affinity and the authenticity of like, hey, they're not just trying to shove something down my throat and sell me
Totally.
something. They're literally like taking into account who I am, where I am, what I'm doing, and my personality, even in certain respects, to feed me back things. And I'm like, oh, they know me now. I feel like I'm part of that club or that brand. And I think with Gen Z, I mean, I'm an old fuck, but with Gen Z, and below, like that's that authenticity and making sure that you're giving them authentic things. Where's that product produced? Is it environmentally friendly? Like all those things go into their buying habits and strategy, and not just friends who recommend it, but where is that brand coming from and that authenticity? And you can get drill down even further using AI, right?
Yeah.
I think it's even better. And why we're not doing it in video is actually kind of bizarre.
Yeah. Well, I think part of where that is coming from is video on the internet is still in large part too much like TV, right?
Yeah,
But it's, video on the internet is a two-way medium, and you know who's on the other end.
right.
And when I started the company, I expected that transition to happen a lot faster than it has. It's been
Yeah,
kind of disappointingly glacial uh, in its speed. But I think when we do arrive there, and it's inevitable that we will, we're
yeah.
going to unlock a totally new experience that's going to be to the benefit of businesses and consumers alike.
I mean, I think the first person to kind of crack that is going to be the winner. I mean, I have to imagine YouTube is thinking through these things, but they've had the stronghold, right? On video for so long, like why change the tire? It's actually working just fine. Like why change it? It's working just fine. We make a lot of money. But you're right. You do know the audience. It's on the other side of it. And why just be video in one dimension, you
Well,
know?
we've started to have these conversations, and you can definitely feel the tide is changing. Like even with sports leagues,
Yeah.
right? Now that, and there's all this collapse of TV that's happening right
Yeah.
now, and a lot more leagues are thinking more about their direct to consumer strategies. And in order to introduce new revenue streams there, yes, it seems like shopping should be in the place that people watch the games. It's 2024. We should have that.
It's not
Uh,
interruptive. It's actually accretive to the business. And
it's
it
totally
actually
creative.
feels natural to me as a user if I'm watching something like that, to give me the opportunity. Because by the way, I'm also sitting there with this.
Totally.
I've got my phone in my hand too. So I could be watching that and I'm looking at my phone. Everybody is multitasking. The day of like, oh, I'm just going to watch something and never want to think about buying what's there, that's gone. Like it's over. And anybody
Yeah.
who thinks that, I think that's old school. That's not. I do want to buy the product off that person's back.
Yeah. And
I
it's
do want to
amazing
buy
that,
that jersey sign that I can only get here, and I may buy it off my phone. But
yeah.
I'm watching that, and it should be just a natural extension of their business.
I think we're finally starting to see maybe it's the advancement of the TV platforms. Now they're
Yeah.
very mature, also combined with great APIs that are very mature. That's starting to unlock these possibilities where those experiences can come to life.
I think
So
the other thing that has to drive it is they need to make more money.
yeah,
Sorry.
they do. Yeah,
They,
exactly. The money is going to talk. That's
they
the
went
main
from
thing.
streaming to like, we're never going to have ads to like, okay, now we all have ads. And you, I mean, like, right. How many of these things have we seen, right? Oh, we'll never have ads. And now we all have, now there's ads or different ways to watch. That's a revenue stream they cannot walk away from. They're not e-commerce companies to begin with, but they have to figure it out because ad revenue is not going to always be there. And it's very, very difficult, as you know, in the media industry to track, spots and dots.
Well, this is such a key component of why it's taking so long. These companies, like let's even just take the sports leagues for a second. They outsource their entire e-commerce operation,
Yeah, which makes no sense to me.
right? Which means that they don't have the expertise in-house.
Yeah.
They're not focused on it. They're not deep in it, doing it every day. And a lot of times we go into conversations with companies, and the media team doesn't talk to the e-commerce team, doesn't talk to the social team. They're siloed.
Completely.
And, again, it's not embracing the potential of the internet as a delivery vehicle for video at all.
No.
Um, and so sometimes breaking through those organizational structures for a company like ours is really challenging.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of companies in the space, you can't just go to like, there's no single decision maker buyer,
Yeah.
right? You have
Yeah.
to get the CMO on board or the marketing org on board, plus this other org. And then
And
when
then the
everyone's
tech
aligned,
guys have to get there and they have to, where's it in my roadmap? And then you have all
right,
that.
right.
And do you think
So
that belongs under the CMO? Like, I'm wondering with the CMO, it's like there's got to be a whole kind of shift of their priorities, or maybe it's a CEO, right? Where it's actually saying, no, like this is our customer and everybody has to work on behalf of the customer and everybody needs to be talking about it. And video is the central point of what we're doing. And then everything's kind of like, again, spiders out from there. I mean, I don't know that they're there in that's disrupting a lot of
it is, it
that's
is.
uncomfortable, I'm sure, to have those discussions.
It's tricky. I think in this market right now, given the macro,
Yeah.
marketers are looking more for attribution tools that can justify their budgets and their existences.
Yeah.
It's sad to say, but it's if you can't point to the results other
Yeah.
than views and impressions,
Yeah.
and you can't pay your bills with views, then
Yeah.
like then
Yeah.
what is it? And then I think the other org that or the other kind of like C-suite person that cares would be the CRO, and
Yeah.
think if they're thinking more innovatively about how to get more revenue for the company. But the other thing that has to happen that is, I think, not happening except for people through like you and others is getting the word out about the successes that are happening in this space, right? There is, I mean, yeah, we're nowhere near in the West what's happening in the East, like not even a fraction yet. But things are working, people are figuring this out, and it seems like the inevitable future that we're heading toward. So it's time to kind of embrace that.
Yeah.
It's just we're not in a market where there's big innovation budgets at the moment, right? So
Right. And I think innovation is, they throw everything under innovation, right? And I
right.
think that's also the misnomer of like, this is not just innovation. This is like revolution.
It
It's
totally.
a revolution. It's not an innovation, guys. This is a revolution of business. If you really address it the right way, it touches every single aspect of the business, top of the funnel, bottom of the funnel, retention, CRM, attribution, like you name it, it kind of goes across all of those. And I think it's scary, probably for a lot of brands and a lot of companies to look at, but it is inevitable. And there are a lot of amazing you guys are doing amazing things, crazy, amazing things. There are great case studies out there. I hope, CES, there is something, at least I know there's a couple people that are speaking on panels, but I hope for Ad Week next year, there's an entire, I mean, that whole damn week should be video commerce as far as I'm concerned. Just
Yeah,
saying here,
I agree. Um,
because
yeah,
it is coming and it's big.
it is coming. I think there's a lot of questions about exactly how it should be brought to market the right way and what the user experience should be, but we're
Right.
seeing like a lot of good examples where it's working. Um, so yeah, I think it's just a matter of more time,
Yeah.
more people getting comfortable with it. Kind of this other trends are affecting what's happening here. For example, influencers gaining more and more leverage in the world as
Yes.
the brand that people trust and through which information is spread and media is consumed and so on, right? So thinking more through that, and then those influencers at the same time realizing, especially for our business, if they want leverage, they need to actually own the audience,
Yes. Yes.
right? That is how you get the leverage,
Yes.
not by renting it,
Yes.
unless you just want your business to be advertising and sponsorship based forever. But if you want to expand beyond that, you need to own your audience. And then you start to bring in tools like us into the equation. And then, okay, now they start getting success there and turning that on. And next thing you know, there's a wildfire, right?
Agreed.
So
I think we could go on for like the next 3 weeks. We should just stay on. We'll just be like
the
24/7. I think we should
longest
just
episode you've ever had.
like 24/7 channel nonstop. We're like the MTV of video commerce now. Like we're just gonna be a 24/7 only video. Thank you so much. It's been great talking to you. I really appreciate it. I know our audience is gonna get a lot out of it. Um, and anybody wants to talk to you, can you give your email address so they've got it?
Yeah, you can email me at Ari, that's ARI, at maestro.io. That's the easiest way to get in touch with me. And then you can also join our Discord. There's a link on our website to join our server, where our team's on there and chatting all the time.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.